Our first word is obviate. Here it's being used as a verb. When you obviate something, it means that you anticipate it or prevent it from happening, perhaps even eliminate it. You can obviate a problem. It's very closely related to the word obvious, and think about that. It actually comes from the same Latin origin. You have that prefix ob, ob. We've seen that several times before. Ob is an intensifier. Sometimes it means against, and it comes from a very, very common Latin word via way, against the way, and that's what you're really doing. You're making something disappear along the way as you deal with it. Way to remember it is this way: it's obvious that you have to obviate the problem. It's a rather important word. You see it a lot on standardized tests. It should be paired up with the very last definition down, to make unnecessary. Our next word is a bit more fun: charlatan. A charlatan is a person who pretends or claims to have more knowledge, perhaps more skill, than he or she possesses. Another way of thinking about it is the slang word, it's a quack, somebody who's really quite a quack. We use the slang word quack, that's the sound a duck makes, to indicate somebody's just completely a fool, a nut. And it actually comes from the Italian word which meant quack. It's derived indirectly from the Latin also, ciarle, which meant to babble. So it has that sort of meaning and background. It should be paired up with the fifth one on the list, a faker or deceiver. A charlatan is almost always used in a negative way. Our third word today is dearth. The word dearth means that you have an inadequate supply, you're short, you're scarce of a certain item, you lack something, and it comes from an old English Germanic word deore, which sounds sort of like dearth, deor, dearth, and we actually still use it in English, not so much in America. In England, if you ever go to England, if you hear somebody say, oh, it's dear, it means it's very costly or precious or expensive. It's still in present day usage of German, where they use the word teuer, which means expensive or costly or precious also. So it's one of these few Germanic Old English words that are stuck in our language, and you really should think of it as something's dear to you, it's very precious, and you have a dearth of it, you have a scarcity of it. It should be paired up with the third item down, a lack or scarcity. Our fourth word takes us back to our Latin roots, lucid. A person who is lucid is easily understood, completely intelligible, very, very clear. You can have, for example, a lucid explanation. That's a good thing to have lucid explanation. And it comes from the Latin lucidius, which meant light or bright or clear. Compare that with words such as elucidate. It's very similar to that. So if you do that, you can see how it's related. That should be paired up with the fifth item down, clear or translucent. Remember, the word loose is in translucent. Loose, translucent means it's sort of clear. We now come to the fifth word, maverick. Maverick is one of my favorite words. I really enjoy this word. Originally, maverick was an unbranded cow or calf. In the American Old West, you had this great event where raising cattle was very important, and in the East we traditionally fenced them in, but in the West you would just let them roam. The problem with letting them roam was they sort of mixed together, so if you didn't have a brand on a calf, a burned in impression on the calf, you didn't know whose was who, so it was considered a bad thing. We don't use the word so much for that anymore, although you can. We now use it to indicate somebody who is a lone dissenter, a intellectual or a politician who takes an independent course. And that's exactly how we got the word. We got the word from this rancher Samuel Maverick, who was in the 1800s. It was obviously a cattle rancher in Texas, and he basically did not brand his cattle, and he was really considered very independent, maybe a nutcase, I don't know, somebody who was certainly different, and he was called a maverick, and we now have the word used for anybody who takes an independent course of action. You've seen it a lot in American politics in the last few years. Anytime somebody who takes a very independent course is considered a maverick in his party. That should be paired up with the fourth definition down, a person pursuing rebellious or disruptive acts. And that can be a definition of maverick also. Very similar. Our next word is not so interesting, but it's used a lot, so you should learn it. The sixth word is abeyance. Abeyance is to leave something inactive, maybe in a temporary way, to cease, to suspend. You can leave the problem in abeyance. You can leave almost anything in abeyance. It means I'm just going to put it away and not deal with it right now. It's generally has that sense of being temporary. And it's from an English-French word, the Anglo-French word abeyance, which is very similar to the word abash, not really too close, and it's also related to the Latin batare, which meant to yawn. If you can think of, you hold something in abeyance, you put it off to the side, maybe you do yawn a lot. So that should be paired up with the very, very top choice, inactivity. Our seventh word is benign. That's pronounced nine, as in the letter 9, but it's spelled N-I-G-N. Anytime you have that N-I-G-N, it's usually has something of a French origin, although this really goes back to the Latin. From the B-E-N, we've had that before. Benign means well or good. And that's basically what benign means. It means kindly. You have a benign personality, a favorable personality, maybe a sense of luck sometimes, not often, but sometimes. It's used a lot in medicine. If you have a benign tumor, benign something growing on you, it means it's growing, but it's not going to hurt you. It's not a harmful thing. It's not a cancer that's going to kill you. So you hear it that way too. And as you should be able to guess by now, it comes from the Latin bene, which meant well. The last part is the gignere, which is to bear well. And that's how the French got it and why we get so many GNs in English. Think about all the GNs that you get in English, sign and so forth. It should be paired up with the definition directly across from it, the seventh definition down, favorable or propitious. Our eighth word is celerity. Celerity means swift or speedy, quick. It comes from the Latin celeritatem, which meant swift. Celer, C-E-L-E-R in Latin meant swift. And you should really think about this. It looks like a complicated word, but you probably have used the word accelerate. It means to go fast. If you are driving a car and you want to go faster, in America you push down on your foot on the accelerator. It means that you go fast. So celerity means swiftness or speed. It should be compared with the ninth definition down, rapidity or velocity. So you can have celerity of thought. It can be used in a very metaphorical way also. Our ninth word is fastidious. If you're fastidious, you're excessively particular, maybe a little bit on the critical side or demanding side. It's not always negative. Sometimes you can have a fastidious way of approaching a problem, a fastidious personality, and it comes from the Latin fastus, which meant pride. It's Really better to remember fastidious means that you want to get to something really, really carefully, very tediously. And you can see in the Latin, the fastest meaning pride, the last part of that is tedious, which we still get the word tedium, which was a Latin word which meant to be wary. You're wary with pride, you're full of pride, you're weighed down with pride. So it should be compared with the eighth definition down, hard to please or meticulous. Our 10th word is persnickety. I just like this word. It's really got me into a fight once with a old girlfriend because they called her persnickety. So please try to use it a little bit more carefully than I did. Persnickety means that you're snobbish, maybe fussy, maybe hard to please, very choosy. The origin of the word persnickety is sort of unknown. I think it comes from a type of Scottish word, a dialect of English, Scottish, but they're really not sure where it comes from. That happens occasionally. History of words are not written as the words are being used. We sort of have to go back and go through a lot of sources on that, but persnickety is one of those unknown origins of words, and our best guess is that it's Scottish. It should be paired up with the second definition down, fussy, snobbish, or having an aloof attitude. Use it with your enemies, and probably it's best to say it behind their back because you never know if they'll know what it means. This completes another set of 10.